flying combat, you get in the zone like a runner in a long-distance race. And you blank out everything else except what you're doing in your combat missions. You're just kind of in a perpetual state of suspension. I'm Wallace Noel King, generally known as Wally King, and I served in the U.S. Army Air Corps when I was 18 years old. Served on active duty from January 1943 to October 1945. And I served in the 9th Air Force in Europe, was a fighter pilot, and did 75 combat missions. I was born on Halloween 1923. I grew up in a small town of Cortland, Ohio, which a rural town had about 500 population. Of course, this was in the Depression, so we were poor. I'd made model airplanes as a kid. Smiling Jack was my favorite comic strip. Spent all day Saturday making a model airplane out of tissue paper and balsa wood with a rubber band motor and then crashing it on Sunday. So I always wanted to fly.
We have witnessed this morning and a severe bombing of Pearl Harbor.
I was dating a girlfriend in Youngstown, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and learned that the attack on Pearl Harbor had occurred. And my reaction was sort of no reaction, because I think all of the boys in my graduating class understood they were going to be serving in a war. So that was the impetus to enlist in the Air Corps in the late summer of 1942. So they dreamed up the idea of sending all of us to 4 weeks of regular Army basic training. And I went to Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana. About June of 1943, I went to San Antonio Aviation Cadet Center to go through classification and pre-flight school. 9.5 weeks, and to Eagle Pass, Texas for advanced flying training. Then I was commissioned and sent to Tallahassee to a fighter transition school where we learned to fly fighters. Was commissioned, got my wings in March of 1944, Class 44C. Shortly thereafter, I was on the Aquitania sailing for Europe. We went across the Atlantic unescorted because the Aquitania could outrun the submarines. So that was the theory, at least. I was flown over to Beachhead. There I joined the 363rd Fighters Group, but then I flew Thunderbolts all through the rest of the war.
Now in the briefing room, the S2 officers and the ops officers wind up the job of laying out today's mission on the large-scale map.
Fighter pilots never made any friends because you never knew when that friend was going to disappear. It's amazing how many pilots didn't make 5 missions, got shot down, or some only 1 or 2 missions. The Germans were retreating fast, and we were trying to interrupt their supplies and just cause whatever mayhem we could. I think I flew 45 missions in March. You'd go find targets of opportunities. Anything to shoot up you could find that might have military value. You have to learn to overcome fear. You cannot be an effective combat person, whether pilot or ground pounder, if you're fearful. You've got to somehow suppress that fear and focus on what you're doing. So on that last mission, riding out to the planes that morning, it was an 8-plane mission, which was very unusual. Usually flew 12 or 16. So we were just sent out to see what we could find. And the Russians were coming from the east. They were probably within 50 miles of the Elbe River. The wingman called and said, "Did you see that huge cannon down there on that train?" I said, "Go on back, we'll make one quick low pass over this thing and see what it is." It was a huge cannon. I got hit by light flak. heard it hit the engine, kaboom, and my wingman said, "You're burning." I'm sitting on the fuel tank, so I think it's time to go. So I got my heels up on the seat, just went straight up, head over heels, and the chute opened. I was just out the outskirts of a little village. I heard these hissing noises. I thought they were insects or something, and I looked up and there were holes in my parachute, so I knew they were shooting at me with rifles. I flew over this house, almost hit the house on the drift, and I was stunned and got my mind together, and I got out of my chute. Here come them guys with the rifles down the path that I had running, so I surrendered, and they took me prisoner. They walked me back to the house I had just cleared on that parachute drop. I went in the house, and must have been a medical person, a doctor or something. They started working on the burns on my face. Bang, a door bangs open. Here's two young German soldiers, looked like they're about 16, and swatted me across the head with their burp gun, knocked me off the stool, grabbed me and picked me up and took me out. And by this time, the little gated front yard, it was fence-to-fence yard, was filled with civilians. You couldn't get any more in there. There must have been 30 of them. And they had to part them, let me through, and of course they're beating me with sticks and spitting on me and welcoming me to Germany and all that sort of stuff. They wanted me to go up the hill. It was a slight incline up to the main road. They gave me the bicycle to use as a crutch so I could hobble along, hold. And I was just, at that time, sure panic set in. I mean, I suddenly realized I'm in big trouble because I thought they were going to take me out of town and shoot me. And really low, and all of a sudden I said, you know, I'm in the toughest spot of my life, and I've never thought about God. And then in that moment, it was just like someone turned a switch. I became absolutely relaxed. And it wasn't that I was going to survive, but whatever happened was going to be all right. And that was a turning point in that whole experience. There was 2 weeks I was a prisoner. That feeling continued till I got back to American lines. It didn't matter, and we were in a lot of tough spots. Whatever happened didn't concern me. I just had a certain amount of peace or acceptance of what situation I was in. We drove probably 5 miles to a German military installation, sent me upstairs to the second floor, and they had a padded cell, probably for mental patients. And they shoved me in there and slammed the door shut. German doctor started looking at my burns and he thought my ankle was broken. He said, "You're a lucky fellow." Oh, I guess I agreed with him at this point. And I said, "Yes, I understand that." He said, "No, you don't understand it." He says, "That village you parachuted into killed a bomber crew yesterday." But we finally got to a low frame cottage building, and he pulled over and I sat on the floor, and a fella filled out my prison tag, which I still have. I still have that tag, believe that or not. That's where I stayed for 2 weeks in that little house. And we're on a Russian front. We could hear the artillery, Russian artillery and the German artillery. The German doctor decided he had these wounded Americans that couldn't talk. They were all unconscious. And it had been there a week or more. And there's no medication, no tension. So he says, they're gonna die if we don't do something. So he commandeered 2 ambulances. And the German-American officer said, "We're leaving tonight after midnight. We're all gonna go to the American lines." So we went across, down across the pontoon bridge and up the other side, and I was back in our Allied lines. A unique story on the fact that, all Germans weren't bad, that my survival was largely dependent upon a German doctor that was very humane, and not only to me, but other Americans. I was home on recuperation leave for 75 days when I got home on my birthday, October 31st. It was on a Saturday. I went to work for the railroad, enrolled to night classes at Youngstown College. I was married, before I went overseas. And in that marriage, we'd adopted As soon as I passed the CPA exam in 1951, I became an income partner. I retired in 1984 at the age 60, which was mandatory, which largely was my doing, to mandate that the old guys had to get out and make room for the new blood. I got everything out of flying you can possibly imagine. That's why at 50 I didn't have any regrets to giving it up, because when you've flown 75 dive bomb missions going from 550 miles an hour and pulling out, hoping you didn't get hit with flak, it's quite an experience. I always tell audiences that war is an ugly, evil thing, and nothing glamorous about war. You read the movies about all this acts of courage and so forth, which is true, but war is just an evil thing. It's totally inhumane. Because I think we were satisfied with it was a just cause. It was something that had to be done. It was so obvious it was necessary to do this, to go defeat the Nazis and liberate Europe.
In a symbolic gesture, American troops destroy the Nazi Party emblem.
Here's a question I often get when I'm telling you, weren't you afraid? Yeah, I was afraid. I was scared to death. The first time you roll over and you see that curtain of flak below you, and you've got to go down in there and drop your bombs and get back out without getting killed. I thought I was dead the first mission I saw the flak.